Hey guys, it is 2Pro or Adam, and welcome back to another Blackout video. Today I'll be going over 5 of the best weapons right now here in Blackout, because with the most recent update, there have been a ton of changes to all the weapons, and there are a lot of guns that weren't so great before the update that are all of a sudden really good. So I want to go over what I think are the most OP guns right now. So since I'm doing a top 5 video, I love doing these sound quizzes. For those of you that are new, the way it works, I'm gonna go ahead and play a quick sound from Blackout. This one's gonna be an easy one. All you have to do is comment below what you think this sound is. So, good luck to all of you with that sound right there. If you play Blackout, you should know that sound right away. And of course, for those of you who are new here and you enjoy the Blackout content, go ahead and hit that sub button. If you are subbed, make sure you have notifications turned on. And besides that, let's go ahead and jump into the first of 5 weapons that are really good right now in Blackout. Starting off my list in the number 5 spot, I'm going to kick things off with the most obvious weapon on this list, and that is the SWAT. The SWAT is one of the most reliable and just overall OP weapons here in Blackout. After all of the nerfs, the thing still shreds. Before the most recent update, the SWAT was an absolutely amazing weapon. Like I said, it was the best gun in the game, and even now it kind of still is, but before the updates, yeah, it was too much. So with the most recent update on the 19th of February, Treyarch did nerf this thing, so they increased the idle sway, they reduced the damage, and they increased the first and second shot recoil. Now, a lot of these things are noticeable, but here's the thing. Once you have these SWAT fully loaded with attachments, I think the most important one has to be the foregrip. Once you have those attachments on this thing, and you don't go crazy with your shots, you kind of control your shots, burst your shots, this thing is just as good as before the update. Coming in at our number 4 spot, we have the ABR, and the ABR is a gun I'm sure we've all used in Blackout before the update. The ABR was up there with the SWAT as one of the most OP weapons in the game. It was so accurate, and if you hit all your shots, you could instantly kill somebody. Now, with the February 19th update, the ABR caught a pretty big nerf, and you're all expecting this. It definitely is still a good weapon. It's just not as good as it once was, and I think it's below the SWAT now. So here's what changed with the ABR. They increased the time between bursts. This is a pretty big thing, and it's really noticeable in game. You cannot hit your target as quickly as you once could. The next one is the reduced recenter speed. This one really isn't that big of a deal, and slightly increased ADS move speed. But overall, the big thing with the ABR is that first one, with your time between bursts being a lot longer. It makes the gun not as crazy good as it once was. It's still a good gun. If you get your headshots, if you can hit all your shots, it's still an amazing weapon, and it's a gun you should still use. But if you use it a ton before the updates, be prepared for an ABR that's just not as good. Next up in our number 3 spot, we have the Damon SMG, and the Damon is probably currently one of the most overpowered weapons right now in Blackout, because before the most recent update, the Damon was a gun no one ever used. It was a weapon that just didn't compete with the other weapons in that same category. Of course, the Damon is an SMG, and going up against something like a Spitfire or even a Cordite or a GKS, it just didn't stand a chance. So the Damon is a burst weapon. The bursts are pretty quick, but since it is a burst weapon, the damage just was a little bit too low. It felt like you were hitting people with so many bursts and they weren't dropping. But on February 19th, this thing received a pretty nice buff, and now I have to say the Damon is probably my favorite SMG to use in Blackout. So here's the weird thing with the Damon and the new updates. Either they did not list everything they changed with this gun, or every other SMG is just worse than the Damon right now, and we kind of experienced something similar with the Spitfire. When the Spitfire was king and they nerfed that thing, the SOG kind of became the best SMG. Now with this update, the SOG got nerfed pretty heavily, and now it seems like the Daemon is the go-to SMG. There is still one more SMG on this list, but the Daemon is definitely up there as one of the better SMGs, and it's a lot of fun to use. So speaking of other SMGs, we have the MP40, and the MP40 is another strange weapon with this new update. Just like the Daemon, there were really no mentions of any buffs. Actually, there was zero mention of the MP40 in the patch notes. So I don't know what happened to this gun, because we all know how the MP40 really wasn't a good gun before this update. On top of that, it was a really rare weapon. Now, of course, the MP40 and the Grav are laying around like every other weapon. They're still a little bit more rare, but you find the MP40 usually once a game or once every other game. But man, the MP40 just shreds. The MP40 is one of the slower shooting weapons, or SMGs, in Blackout compared to the MX9 or the GKS or the Spitfire or the Cordite. Really nothing all that crazy, but the thing about the MP40, this thing is like a laser gun. It has little to no recoil, and it seems like all of the shots do a decent amount of damage. So the MP40, I just said the Daemon is one of my favorite guns or SMGs in Blackout right now, but I don't know, the Daemon and the MP40 are both really good guns. Whatever gun I usually find first, I'll keep for the entire game. But yeah, for those of you who are kind of finding a new SMG to use, either use the MP40 or the Daemon. They are both really good guns right now. Coming in at our number 1 spot, and by the way, this list is not in any specific order. This is just the way I had the things ordered on my list, so this gun isn't better than the other 5. Now, that weapon is the MOG 12. The MOG 12 is more of a skill-based weapon. It's not like every other gun on this list where it's just kind of point and shoot. The MOG 12 definitely requires a little bit of skill, and once you do kind of understand how this weapon works, you can be absolutely deadly with this thing. I had noticed that a lot of people were using the MOG 12, and it kind of is the new meta here in Blackout. Now, one thing I personally don't like doing is using the MOG 12 in solos, because in solos, when you encounter somebody and you're in a gunfight, the MOG 12 isn't the best idea. But when it comes to duos and squads where you have, other people or other teammates to distract the enemy, you can easily kind of swoop in there and take a shot, take cover, take another shot and take cover, and absolutely melt an entire team. But when it's just one-on-one, the MOG 12 definitely isn't as reliable. But overall, the MOG 12 is one of the better weapons in Blackout, but it definitely requires the most skill. Now, we aren't done quite yet. I actually have 2 honorable mentions. These are weapons that I think are still really good or got improved with the most recent updates, but didn't necessarily make my top 5. So the first weapon I wanted to include was the Rampart. I wanted to have at least one 7.62 weapon on this list, and the Rampart has always been a pretty good gun in Blackout, and even to this day, it is still a really good gun. The iron sights are great. It's great with the Elo sight. My favorite is the ×2 scope. The Rampart was not touched in the most recent update, so it's the exact same as it was before the update, and it's always been a really reliable gun. So if you enjoy those 7.62 guns, the Rampart, in my opinion, is the best. The last weapon I wanted to briefly mention was the Swordfish. And the Swordfish is kind of an interesting gun within Blackout right now, because before this update, the Swordfish was really bad. I don't know how many of you actually use this thing consistently or used it all the way to end game. The Swordfish did get a bit of a buff Nothing too crazy. It has improved, but I still think it needs one more buff for it to be actually as good as the ABR or on even playing fields, but it reduced the recoil of the second, third, and fourth shots, which is nice, and slightly increased ADS move speed. Now, the Swordfish, when it comes to range or medium to long range, the ABR is way better. When it comes to close quarters, the Swordfish is a very, very good weapon. I feel like the Swordfish is better at close range while the ABR is better at long range. Still not an OP gun, but it's something that's worth using for sure. So there you have it, guys. Those were the best weapons currently right now in Blackout. If you enjoyed the video and you enjoy Blackout content, make sure to hit that sub button. And besides that, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out.